What does the text most strongly suggest about the site discovered by the researchers? Okay, so this is going to be an explicit detail, some information in the text that's going to tell us about the site discovered by the researchers. So paleontologist such and such and colleagues have reported the discovery at a mine in Brazil of several egg clutches, partially preserved single eggs and eggshells from the late Cretaceous period. The researchers have concluded that the area was once a nesting and breeding site for titanosaurs, a group of sauropod dinosaurs. The finding is significant given the previous lack of known nesting sites in northern regions of South America. So there were no sites in northern South America, basically somewhere up here. We found the titanosaurs, and there were previously none that far north, which led many paleontologists to assume that titanosaurs migrated south to lay eggs. So what does the text most strongly suggest? It is the earliest known example of a titanosaur nesting and breeding site. The earliest known? No, it said nothing about the earliest known. There were some that were south that were known prior to that. So that is not the case. B, it was very difficult to excavate. Difficult to excavate? Nothing here says it was difficult to excavate. That's not true. It's unique, hard to find, but not difficult to excavate. C, it may have been occupied by other sauropods in addition to titanosaurs. It was a breeding site for titanosaurs, a group of sauropod dinosaurs. Never said there were any other ones in there. That's not correct. D, it is farther north than any other nesting site discovered in South America. Yes. There's a previous lack of known nesting sites in northern regions of South America. This is it. D is the correct answer. 6. Which choice best states the main idea of the text? So we want to get the main idea of the text. Let's take a look. Several scholars have argued that conditions in England in the late 9th through early 11th centuries, namely burgeoning literacy and running conflicts between England's Anglo-Saxon and Danish invaders, were especially conducive to the production of the Old English epic Beowulf. Okay, so something about 9th to 11th century conditions, resulted in Beowulf, the Old English epic poem. Okay, so somehow it fit those times. And they have dated the poem's composition accordingly. Okay, so that has led to the dating, 9th to 11th century. It is not inconceivable that Beowulf emerged from such a context. But here's the contrasting idea. Privileging contextual fit over the linguistic evidence for an 8th and 7th century composition requires a level of justification that thus far has not been presented. Okay, so what exactly does this mean? The idea that contextual fit dates it to the 9th or 11th century is a better approach than the linguistic evidence for 7th or 8th century has not really been justified. So we do assume it's 9th to 11th century, but the contextual evidence really doesn't show anything better than the linguistic evidence, which suggests an earlier time. That seems to be what's going on here. So what's the main idea? Let's take a look. Although there are some grounds for believing that Beowulf was composed between the late 9th and early 11th centuries, advocates for that view tend to rely on evidence that has been called into question by advocates for an earlier date. Okay, so nothing here says advocates for an earlier date call it into question. There's not necessarily good justification to choose one versus the other, but nobody calls either into question, so that's not quite right, A. B. Although several scholars have dated Beowulf to the late 9th century through 11th century, yes, that's true, right? Several scholars have. Others have argued that doing so privileges a controversial interpretation of these social conditions of the period. Wait, a controversial interpretation? Nothing says the interpretation of that period is controversial. That's not right, okay? The conditions of the period were appropriate towards suggesting a dating of 9th to 11th century. So it's not controversial. C, although Beowulf fits well with the historical context of England in the late 9th through early 11th centuries, it does, yes, according to the text. It fits equally well with the historical context of England. No, it never says it fits historically well with the 7th to 8th century context. It says there's linguistic evidence for 7th and 8th centuries. It does not say it fits in the context. That's not correct. D, although the claim of late 9th through early 11th century composition date for Beowulf has some plausibility. It does in the context of the particular time of England and Danish invaders. Advocates for the claim have not compellingly addressed evidence suggesting an earlier date. Right, they have not addressed the evidence of 7th or 8th century composition based on linguistic evidence. So it's not that there's a controversy, they simply have not addressed the linguistic evidence. And that's what the text says. This is the right answer, D. Okay, we've got to find the main idea of the text. For centuries, the widespread acknowledgement of the involvement of the cerebellum, a dense brain structure in vertebrates, in coordinating motor control in humans has hindered recognition of other possible functions of the structure. Okay, so we've got a cerebellum. And what do we know? We acknowledge that this drives motor control in humans. However, it's hindered recognition of other possible functions of the structure, which means it does more than just motor control. Neuroscience research from the last 2 decades now suggests that the cerebellum regulates emotion and social behavior, and recent research has identified a pathway connecting the cerebellum to a center for motivation and reward processing, known as the VTA. Okay, so the main idea here is the cerebellum has long been known to drive motor control in humans, but more recently, there are other functions as well that are emotional and social in nature. Okay, so A, the recent verification of a pathway between the VTA and the cerebellum confirms the cerebellum's long suspected role in motor coordination. No, it's not about the motor coordination. That's already known. And that's not what this new connection does. The new connection actually connects to motivation and reward processing. So this is not correct. B, recent advances in the field of neuroscience have challenged widely accepted claims about the function of a pathway connecting the VTA and the cerebellum. No, this is recently studied, and there's no challenging of that in the text at all. They've just simply identified this pathway, this VTA, which creates connections to motivation reward processing centers. So that's not right. Nobody's challenging that VTA connection. C, the cerebellum has primarily been thought of to regulate motor functioning. Yes, that's true. But in recent years, neuroscience researchers have been uncovering additional functions. Yes, that's true too. Emotion, social behavior, this VTA connection. C is going to be our right answer. Let's check D. Technological limitations have historically hindered the study of the cerebellum, but the recent new developments of technologies have led to greater insights into its functions. Okay, this sounds a lot like C, except this one's focused on technology limitations. Where in the text does it mention technological limitations? That's not a core idea. That is incorrect. C is the right answer. Which choice best states the main idea? Okay, so another main idea. Let's take a look. So remember, our main idea is the topic and what's interesting, the so what, why we care about it. It's a bit of a summary of the core ideas. So modern dog breeds are largely the result of 160 years of owners crossbreeding certain dogs in order to select for particular physical appearances. Okay. Owners often say that some breeds are also more likely than others to have particular personality traits. So wait, crossbreeding, that is dog breeding, leads to, types of dogs. The second part is saying it also leads to personality types. More than just a type or look of dog, but a personality type or trait for particular dogs. Basset hounds are affectionate, so these are some examples. Boxers are easy to train. Such and such and colleagues found through a combination of owner surveys and DNA sequencing of 2,000 dogs that while physical traits are predictably heritable among purebred dogs, behavior varies widely among dogs of the same breed. So this study shows no, not really true. That's just not true. Okay. In fact, there's no clear behavior traits among the pure breeds that are bred as types of dogs. So let's check the answers. A, dog breeds would not exist without many years of human intervention. Well, that's true, but it's also irrelevant to the question or the main idea here, which is that you don't breed personality types as you breed types of dogs. B, research fails to confirm a commonly held belief about dog breeds and behavior. So the research, that was the research by Kathleen and colleagues, and it failed to confirm the belief that you can breed for personality types, right? Or behavior. This looks to be the right answer. It's more abstract, but I think this is the correct idea. Let's check C and D. The dog breeds most popular among owners. It's not about popularity. Again, these typical wrong answers. The most popular, the fastest growing, the most successful. That's not the idea here. D, a study of dog breeds is notable for its usage of both opinion surveys and DNA sequencing. No, that's not the main idea. It's not noticeable for those behaviors. So that is not going to be the right answer. B is the correct answer. It shows a research study that fails to acknowledge or support the idea that dog breeds have specific dog personality types.